Hi everybody, welcome to Painting for Pleasure. I'm your host, Tony Visco. We're going to do another exciting painting today of an early rise over the water. It's a shot that I was looking at recently, and I said it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got some wonderful, vibrant colors to it, and we had fun with this in the past, and I think we're going to do another one today. I really like this shot, and hopefully it'll work out. So be my guest. Let's move over to the board and let's take a look at it. Well, here we are at the board, and here's my photograph, my reference material, my photograph that I took. It's an absolutely wonderful shot. It's got some beautiful, beautiful colors, nice warm glows on the water. And it's a very simple scene for a lot of us to take care of and do, to look at. We're basically looking up over the water to a early rise in the sun, but not that real heavy color. Just these are subtle colors. You got a beautiful cerulean blue sky that moves into a little bit of a cobalt blue, and you got this cloud mass that's over here that's dark behind the light that's coming up. The sun's coming up on the horizon, and just a warm mauve color that goes across the water. So we're going to make this our attempt today, and let's just use it. Put the reference material right over here so I can take a look at it and see it, and we'll get started. Now, I think in terms of this particular look, I think what we want to do is we want to thoroughly saturate the paper, because I think we'll create a better effect if we do that than to try to paint it otherwise. So let's get our thoroughly saturated brush in hand here. And I'm going to end up, let's start with the back side of this. Now I'm going to probably have to realign this for the camera, but we're just going to move this over right now, and I'm going to take and I'm going to do the back side of this right now. Okay? And we want to get the fibers of the paper nice and wet. And what we're going to do is we're going to end up turning it over and then doing the same thing on the other side. And the reason for this is that I need to get a nice feeling of softness in my brush strokes as I paint both the sky and the water. And I can create that a little bit better with a paper that's thoroughly saturated. So there's the back side. I'm working on a 140-pound. It's a softer paper. It's Strathmore. It's a 100% rag paper and acid-free. So let's just line this up for the camera right now and make sure that we're okay. And we'll wet this side. Now, as you can see, it's curling away from us right now. Now we're going to end up flattening it out by saturating the paper this way, and it should lay down nice and flat for us. As you heard me say at other times, for years people just wet the paper just to get the sizing out of the paper, and then they'd let it dry for a while. So my paper's saturated. There's a glisten or a gleam on the paper. And we want to take advantage of that in some cases. What I'm going to be working with is a lot of colors like cerulean blue, cobalt blue, my opera, which is a wonderful, wonderful color, and when you mix it with cerulean blue, I should get some of that nice, pretty mauve color that's down at the bottom. A little bit of burnt sienna, and perhaps maybe a cool yellow, like a Naples yellow. But let's just touch the top of it first of all. So what I'm going to do basically is come in here and I'm going to mix cerulean blue. We're going to just start with pure cerulean blue, and we're going to come across this with some nice vibrant tones. And I'm going to start about at that area and work my way up into the sky, and as I go up into the sky, to the top of the sky, I'm going to change up to a little bit of cobalt blue mixture with this as well. So we're going to see some of this. And I don't want it too streaky in this case. What I'm doing is feathering this adding a little bit more cobalt blue, and coming over here and feathering this down. So we're going to start to run this cobalt blue down and slowly go down from the top of the paper down to about right here. There's very little light area. And then from there on down, I'm going to change up the color. From there on down, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and I'm going to mix my cerulean blue with some opera. All right, and you'll see this nice, vibrant warmth, and I'm going to add a touch. Well, let me change this up a little bit. Hang on, we're just going to wipe this out because it's a little bit, I want a little bit more vibrance than that. So let me just do this and go back up, and we'll go back in and we'll take the opera and put it down. Okay, and we're going to add a little bit of opera with a little bit of my cadmium yellow, cadmium orange. Okay, so we want to create this nice, interesting area. And we're going to come across and do the same thing down here. Very light. Nice water, a little bit more of my opera. As I come up, there's going to be some nice warm streaks in the sky. Let's create a little bit of more of add a little bit of Naples yellow to this. Down in this area. And we're going to softly bring it up so that we've got a general feeling of going from cool blues down to this nice warm feeling. Okay, so we're going to come across the water. And as I come across the water, I'm getting a little bit more of my opera, my mauve color here into this. And then we're going to change it up and get a little bit bluer as I come down. This is just my underpainting. And a little bit more bluer. And come over here with a little bit more purple. And you can actually see that it's as wet as I got this. I'm still getting a little bit of a dry area. Interesting. But we'll deal with it. Okay. Nice, brilliant feeling of my combination of opera. Make a nice, interesting purple, cobalt blue, even more so. Adding some water in here. And don't mean to force the issue, but the paper that all this, even with all of that wetness under these lights, because we're getting a little bit more dry area, but that's okay. We'll just work this up, okay? So my underpainting has got a gradual change from the blue to the blue of the sky, cobalt blue at the top. Add a little bit of stronger value up there at the top. And I'm going to, right now, take my tissue, and put water in the brush, and I want to make this a light area. I'm going to pick my horizon line. So my horizon line is going to be about right here, and I'm going to remove some of that as it comes across. Okay, so we're removing the paint as it comes across to give me some strength, and I'm going to remove by adding water some of these areas where I'm going to end up having lighter area. Lighter area. So I created, what I'm doing is I'm creating some streaks. Now the painting that I'm doing, or the application of the paint to the paper on a wet surface, means that the painting as it dries it's dynamic, so it's going to continue. There's going to be a continual process of a gradation in the color and a graduation from one color to another. And it's going to work. It's going to work as I talk. If I sat here and I talked to you for the next 15 minutes, this would actually end up comfortably, literally painting itself. But it's very important that we actually take and lighten up that area down in this area where the water is at the horizon line. So we're just adding the water. Let it set in a bit. And you can see basically what happens. Taking water, putting it in the brush, it's nice and wet, running it right across to take and remove a lot of that stuff. And then I'm going over it to remove some of it. So you can see the very different, the strength of that. So let's go back and take my cadmium orange and my opera again. I'm going to mix it up. And we're going to start to create a few interesting streaks coming across. And notice what I'm doing is I'm actually starting on the outside of the paper and I'm moving this across. So just a couple of them, a couple of dark streaks. And now I'm going to start working the other way. I need to get a little bit more of my combination of opera and blue together to get a darker pigment going. Now in this case what I'm going to do is use more pigment on my brush than water, which means basically it's going to be a damp brush with very little water in it to create the illusion of some of these clouds in the background, okay? So if we come down just basically in the top of the horizon line, we're going to have some cloudy stuff that's going to go on over here. And because I'm actually putting in more pigment, that is to say the brush itself is loaded with pigment and very little water, when I put this stuff in, when I actually apply this, because there's more pigment, it should pretty much form an area, and it's going to pretty much stay where I put it. In other words, it won't spread as much as what I just did here. Okay? So again, strong color, cobalt blue, maybe even some French ultramarine blue mixed in, some nice opera, a lot of pigment, very little water. Okay, and we're going to just start putting some of this in here. I'm going to stand up so I get a better overall look at my piece. I can go back in here and start to create a little bit more of this. I'm adding a little bit I'm adding a little bit of burnt sienna to my French ultramarine blue combination and opera. So I'm combining French ultramarine blue, I'm combining opera, and in this case, because that's somewhat dry, I'm adding a little bit more water. So what's going to happen here is that I probably am going to get, or I may get, I've got to be very careful about this, I may get a bit of blossoms going on here and there. We'll see what happens, okay? But I've got this interesting sky that's coming over, and I'm going to create this sky with a little bit more cerulean blue in it. Bring some cerulean blue in with a damp brush. Okay, because we want a little bit of this cerulean blue to mix in with some of this area right here. All right. Now, what I'm seeing essentially on my reference material is that it's not only down here, but a lot of this is swinging really up into the sky more. So I want to create that a little bit more. Give myself a little bit more of this. And I've got to be careful about the pattern here. I don't want to get to the point where my overall cloud pattern is has standard characters that like space painting, space painting, space painting. You want to make sure that it's asymmetrical, not symmetrical. So, and then as I go up in the top, we'll create a little bit soft. We'll get it a little bit softer and a little bit lighter. Okay. So now we have to make these clouds really convincing. And we want the clouds to be nice and backlit, nice strong backlit clouds against the light sky, the sun coming up in the background. So we're going to be building on top of this. We're going to continue to put darker and darker areas in here, but I don't want to do that when it's too wet. Okay, I want to do that because I'm going to end up having to go over that spot right there, for instance, because we're going to end up with a blossom. Now this is just a quick way to do a painting like this. What we have here also is we've got some striations that are going to go on in here, some cloud formations that are happening that I need to come back in here and pick out. So I'm just taking some water okay, and what we want is a touch of what we're going to do now is we're going to put a touch of lavender in these areas. Which will, with the lavender, because it's a nice rich color and it's a bit on the opaque side, what that's going to do is give us a transition into some clouds, some of these dark clouds, and try to make it a little bit more convincing, like just, let's say, over these areas here. All right, the lavender I'm putting the lavender in, and it's a little bit more of a solid, more pigment than water, to help me create the illusion that I want. I want a soft, billowy, willowy sort of kind of look. But I do want to keep it soft. I want to try to keep it from having a lot of hard edges. So we're going to play with this. We're just going to continue to work with this so that we have a change up in my sky. Now, basically what happened here is that I really ended up losing that real strong light. I wonder if I can let's see if I can pull it back. again, water, just nice plain water. Adding to my light area. What I've just done is I've just lowered, this is my horizon line here. So water is going to do this. Just nice area of light. Okay, brought that back a bit. Let's go back in and give myself a little bit of my, here's what I'm going to do. My Naples yellow, a little bit of opera, and Naples yellow, and I'm going to go back and put some of that more of an opaqueness in it. I gotta be, so let's go get my opera, get my Naples yellow, and you see I'm making this nice feeling over here, this nice color. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to come down a little bit. We're going to come over here and do some strokes that are like reflective strokes. All right. To help, it's just going to help to make that more reflective. And then we're going to come over here and add a few darker areas. Add some of that over here. Now this is going to end up being fairly dark over here too. So again, back to my combination of purples. Let's go back and start to build the darkness up over here a little bit more. French ultramarine blue and opera. Cobalt blue, add a little bit more cobalt blue to this. And maybe we'll hit a little bit of a nice little bit of this in here. So as I sit and as I look at this, we want to make sure that this is nice and soft in here too, and even darker. So let's come in here and make this even, this whole area down here, even darker. So I'm now adding a little bit of my sepia with my French ultramarine blue. Okay, and we're going to come in here and we're going to even make this even, it's dark and warm. So sepia, French ultramarine blue, and start to do some nice areas of dark, warm. Actually, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come back in here and mix that up. And we're going to go back up into the clouds, and we're going to do some of these darker clouds underneath. underneath the bank that I just put in there. Okay, and maybe we're going to just touch a few spots here and there. And soften it. Okay, a little bit of water softens it up. You notice how, see how sort of fluffy that gets? A lot of this stuff over here is not so fluffy, and it's perfectly okay. It's all right. You know, some of this stuff is going to be hard-edged, and some of it's going to be soft. What I'm doing is I'm building this up so that it has a nice, comfortable feeling to it. Hopefully it'll have a nice, comfortable feeling to it. A little bit of water now with tissue. And I'm going to try to just soften this up a bit here and there. Take some of the area on some of these things. I'm going to just take some of this out. And very light, a lot of water now. And we're going to mix a lot of water in that, let that soften up a bit. A little bit of tissue so it gradually goes out. And I probably don't want, I mean, it seems like it's a bit busy in here, so what we may have to do is just come back in and just give it a nice coating of my combination of cerulean blue and opera. So if I can, we're just going to sort of softly build this up so it's not as busy. Okay, we're just working our way up. And what I'm trying to do is just to keep this from being super busy. I mean, it's a busy sky in that it's a busy clouded area, but I don't want it to get streaky. Now, usually, what I tell everybody is once you paint the sky, leave it alone. And that's a good rule of thumb to work with. So once you paint it, don't touch it. Let it go, let it paint itself. And I'm basically trying to do that right now with a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to see how that works out, see if that's even less busy. Maybe my cloud's going to go up off the page here. All right, soft, lifting it up, soft, let it paint itself. So I've got this coming down here and the sky's going over. This is just working out really dark clouds in a sky. All right. And again, some of this stuff is going to be hard edge, some of it's going to be soft. I want to get this a little bit darker down in this area as well. So I'm going back in and mixing up my French ultramarine blue and sepia to get it a little bit more of a dark area. And then I'm going to come in and put some, I'm going to make some of this a little bit more, some of this a little darker. All right. Now, let's get a little bit of my burnt sienna in here, just a little bit of burnt sienna. And we're going to sort of tend to warm this up a bit more over here. All right. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to create, I'll see if I can create a little bit of that blue up there with some more of an opaque look. So I'm going to get my brush, wash it out, dry out the paint, dry out the brush. I'm going to come in with, first of all, a little bit of water and come in here and create a little bit of a softer feel in here. And how about a couple of little nice spritz of nice, interesting. Just pick up some of that blue from the sky up there. So we'll use cerulean blue. Just a touch to bring some of that up. And what we're going to do is soften it up a bit. So I'll take some of that, add the cerulean blue to my lavender, a little bit of that, and I'll bring it in a little bit over here too. Now, let's just let it set a bit, and let's see where that goes, because I think I'm going to even add a little bit more stuff in here. I'm trying to get that to dry down a bit. I could use the dryer on this, my blow dryer, but I think maybe I just want some of that cerulean blue to come through. What I'm looking for is subtle changes. I'm trying my best for the subtle changes. Get some more of this more of that brown in there. And let's just stand back and take a look at what we got so far. I think it's looking fairly good. You got some nice vibrant colors in here. You got some nice warms that are in this area over here that come across over here, and you've got a fairly decent amount of cool colors up in this area. The darks over here offsetting the lights. This is coming in this direction. I suppose that you know, from a compositional point of view, maybe we could. I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. But maybe we could take. Well, I'm not sure I want to even do that, actually. And say take some of this out. Let me get a clean towel. And just to take a little bit of water. And we're going to soften some of these areas in here. Now, generally speaking, what happens is that when you soften an area, you run the risk of maybe putting in some too much linear work. So you probably should all go back when you're softening an area and go back and start from the outside and work yourself into the painting. Now I'm using a little bit of lavender here to help to create a soft gray, a warmer gray in these areas. And you see all kinds of cool stuff when you're looking at clouds, and they vary so much. And sometimes there's just a lot of subtle changes that take place, and and I'm trying to do this so that it doesn't streak. You don't want a lot of streaking. You want to be able to put this in here so that it just all softens together. So what we need to do is we actually have to let that set down a bit. Let's let it all dry out. But I think that basically we've got a nice general feel overall. Let me get I don't have my hockey brush with me. I'm wondering if I can just make this. What I'm doing is trying to just softly feather this. That's wet. I've got maybe. What I'm doing is just softly going over this, just lightly touching it. Hopefully it'll blend in. What I'm really doing is I'm shooting for, I don't want a lot of streaking. And again, it's now a matter of just letting it dry. Just go back in and we have to wait it out a bit. Let it set up. We're going to touch up a few spots here and there. I'm going to come in and like there's a few holes in this area. Now also what I'm going to do is come over here and pick up now this is basically Naples Jello, and I'm going to end up putting a few of them in here, hopefully to help this help that along a bit. And we're going to take a little bit of this, take a little bit of alizarin crimson now, and mix that with my Naples Jello. A couple of small sprigs here and there. I don't want much. Okay. I'm just going to end up detailing this a little bit more. A little bit of Naples Jello, and what we're doing is we're creating that some of that glow in the sky with these on the other underside of these clouds that are back here. All right. Now we're working with watercolor, so what happens is that if you don't literally take the paint right out of the tube, anytime you add water to watercolor, what ends up happening is that it dulls it down. So one of the tricks is to either take your paintbrush, go right into the tube of paint, and put that down, just so that there's absolutely no water in the brush, or paint with gouache. It's more of an opaque water-based paint, perfectly acceptable. It's watercolor. It's very legitimate. So there's literally no issue with it, and it'll give you more of a glow, more of a brighter color, more of a brighter feel. And I'm just going through and just adding a couple of little nuances to this here and there. I think this is all pretty good. One more little small effort, and I think my thinking is that we're going to call this probably a painting. Maybe a bit more darker in here as this dries. Maybe a little bit more dark. Let's go back in and do another mixture of my dark. And I'm coming off, what I'm doing is I'm actually coming off the lights here that I'm working with. See, what's happening is, it's funny, as this dries, it gets lighter. As all of this stuff is drying, it's getting lighter and lighter. And I've lost my heavy darks that were right in here, but we can just go back and sort of put them back in. Okay. I don't have that soft billowiness that I wanted, but nonetheless, I've got a nice feel in here. And I will just see if I can, again, go back and these are one of those things where, again, you know, you got to be very careful with it. Sometimes the good thing to do is just to put it in. Let it sort of just let it, when it's wet, just do its own thing. And in most cases, if you do that and you add all of these colors to it, you don't have this busyness and it just sort of paints itself. But I'm going to call it a painting, and I appreciate you being with me right now. I think that's it. I'm just going to add. See, I say this as I continue to paint. But this is the danger of doing this stuff. You can't continue to paint. You got to let it go. Once that dries, I'll have a better understanding or a better feel for the whole thing. But I think it's a decent painting. I think it works out pretty well. So that's it for right now. Okay, I just wanted to touch bases with you on the painting that we just did, just to give you an insight as to what my thought process is. And it was really to give you an opportunity to create a very strong value and a very light value, very brilliant colors. And I think we've succeeded in doing that. The technique can be done a number of ways. Again, I could have taken and I could have just wet the entire cloud area and allowed all of that paint to flow through. That's one of the techniques. This one we did a little bit differently, but I think it worked out fine. And the idea is to utilize that nice brilliant colors, but sometimes you have to soften those brilliant colors up. It's very important to do that, because you know, if you use them too much out of the tube without softening them, then you run the risk of too strong a color, and it doesn't work. You need some subtle changes, and I think that we've created that with regard to the piece that I did here. So I hope you like it, and I think it's an interesting experiment. Anytime that you paint is an experiment. We learn from the painting process. Every time I pick up a brush, it's an educational process for me, and it will be for you. Every time, even though I paint a lot and I'm doing a lot of work professionally, sometimes you get into a situation where things don't work and you have to go experiment and try out different mechanisms to make sure that it does work. So there's always kinds of tools to use. You can paint with brushes. You can paint with paper towels and tissue. You can scrape a paint, you can take a back of your credit card and scrape in some highlights, which we could have done while this was wet. But nonetheless, the whole idea is to create a well-composed piece with good value in the piece. Don't be afraid of the darks. The problem is that a lot of us sometimes when we're experimenting and painting like this, we're afraid to go in and use real dark pigment, and that can be an issue. I've seen a lot of students just have nice paintings, but they don't bring it up to that final oomph with some good strong darks. So anyway, that's it. I think we've got a successful piece going, and I invite you the next time to view my piece. I'm Tony Visco. This is Painting for Pleasure. You can find me at www.panthonyvisco.com. You can look me up on Facebook and like me. I'm on Instagram. You can follow me. And I am doing a number of YouTube videos as well. And I'm also painting down at the Plymouth Center for the Arts live. So anytime you'd like to come down, I'm there. Take care. Have a good day. See you. Until next time.